Hand me the keys, Ania. My father's voice cut through my brother's wedding reception like a knife through glass. The DJ lowered the music. 180 guests turned toward me. Champagne glasses froze in the air. My brother Caleb sat at the head table beside his new wife, staring at me like I had already ruined something. I stood beside the gift table in my pale blue bridesmaid dress, my fingers wrapped around the silver bracelet my grandmother had left me. My mother, Marlene, smiled like this was all part of the program. "Don't make your father ask twice," she said softly. My father held out his palm. "Your brother needs that beach house now. He has a wife, a future. You've kept it long enough." I looked at his hand, then at the entire room watching me. And I said no. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. Then my father stepped off the dance floor and came toward me. The beach house wasn't some spare vacation property my parents had bought and generously let me use. It was my grandmother's house, the same white-shuttered place where I had slept on a lumpy sofa for 2 years while she went through cancer treatments, the same porch where I had brushed her hair when her hands shook too badly to do it herself. Caleb had visited twice. Both times he complained about the smell of medicine. But now, at his wedding, my parents were acting like the house had always belonged to him. My father's jaw tightened. "Ania, don't embarrass this family." A few guests shifted in their chairs. My cousin Dana lowered her phone. Caleb's bride looked between him and me, her smile fading. Mom leaned close enough that only I could hear her. "You're single. You don't need a whole beach house just to sit there and feel important." I felt the old instinct rise in my throat. Stay calm, don't make a scene, don't be dramatic. That was how they had trained me. But my grandmother's bracelet pressed cold against my wrist, and I heard myself say, louder this time, I said no. Caleb pushed back his chair. "Are you serious right now, at my wedding?" Dad's face changed, not anger exactly, something worse, disbelief that I had disobeyed him where people could see. He crossed the last few feet between us. "Enough," he said. Then his hand struck my face. The sound cracked across the reception hall. My head snapped sideways. My bracelet flew from my wrist, hit the floor and skidded under a chair near the gift table. Somebody gasped. Caleb's bride covered her mouth. My mother did not move. For a moment, all I could hear was the ringing in my ear. Then I bent down, picked up the bracelet, and saw the tiny engraving my grandmother had hidden inside the clasp. "For Ania, when they demand what is yours, call him." My hand started shaking. Not from the slap. From recognition. I stood without saying another word, walked past the staring guests, and pushed through the glass doors into the cold night air. Beside the valet stand, with my cheek burning and the music slowly starting again behind me, I dialed the number I had never used. When he answered, I whispered, "Grandpa, they did it in public." There was no confusion in his voice, only a long, quiet breath. Then he said, "Stay where you are." And that was when I realized my grandfather had been waiting for this call. 20 minutes before my father slapped me in front of everyone, my mother cornered me in the bridal suite. The photographer had just called for family portraits in the garden, and the room was suddenly half empty. Bridesmaids rushed out with bouquets. Someone's curling iron beeped on the vanity. Caleb's bride, Elise, was laughing in the hallway with her sisters. I was reaching for my clutch when Mom stepped in front of the door. "Ania," she said, holding out a cream-colored folder, "before dinner we need you to sign something." I looked at the folder first, then at her face. "What is that?" "Just a family form. There's a bank logo on it." Her smile thinned. "Don't start." That was how every conversation with my mother worked. If I asked one clear question, I was starting something. If I said no, I was selfish. If I cried, I was dramatic. So I took the folder carefully, already feeling the trap before I understood its shape. The door opened behind her. My father came in and closed it. Then he turned the lock. The tiny click made my fingers tighten around the folder. "Dad," I said, "why are you locking the door?" "Because you have a habit of walking away when adults are speaking." I was 29 years old. He moved to the vanity and leaned against it like he owned the room, the wedding, the air inside my lungs. Your brother is married now, he said. He needs stability. That beach house is too much responsibility for you. I stared at him. It's not too much responsibility. I've handled it for 3 years. You've sat in it, Mom said. There's a difference. The words landed exactly where she meant them to. They always found the bruise. I opened the folder. The first page had my full legal name typed beside Caleb's. Below that were phrases I had to read twice. Temporary transfer of management rights. Authorized property access. Collateral review pending further documentation. My mouth went dry. What is this? Dad crossed his arms. A simple arrangement. No, I said, this says management rights. Why is Caleb's name here? Mom gave a small, irritated sigh, like I had just asked why the sky was blue. Because Caleb and Elise need somewhere proper to land after the wedding. They were going to spend part of the honeymoon there, then maybe stay a few months while they figure things out. I looked between them. They planned to move into my house. Don't say it like that, Mom snapped. How else should I say it? Dad's voice stayed low. That was always worse than when he shouted. You should say thank you for being included before decisions were finalized. I almost laughed, but nothing came out. Before decisions were finalized, I repeated, about my house. Mom stepped closer. It was your grandmother's house. She left it to me. She favored you because you hovered around her at the end. That hit harder than I expected. I saw my grandmother in her recliner by the window, her thin hand wrapped around mine, whispering that the ocean sounded better when I opened the porch doors. I saw Caleb standing in that same living room for 10 minutes, checking his watch, asking if we had to keep the television so low. I swallowed. I took care of her. And everyone applauded you for it, Dad said. Now it's Caleb's turn to receive something. I looked back at the page. There was a yellow sticky note attached near the signature line. Get this done before toast. The handwriting was my father's. I lifted the note with 2 fingers. You planned this for the reception. Mom's eyes flicked to Dad. That was my answer. Before either of them could speak, the door handle turned. Dad unlocked it and Caleb stepped inside, already dressed in his tuxedo, boutonniere slightly crooked, face flushed from photos and champagne. What's taking so long? He asked. I held up the folder. You knew about this. Caleb looked at the papers, then away. Elise and I need a real start, he said. You have an entire beach house you barely use. I use it all the time. Weekends don't count. I blinked at him. You never even asked me. He rolled his eyes. Because asking you gives you a chance to make everything complicated. For a second, the bridal suite felt too small for all of them. My father by the vanity, my mother blocking the door, Caleb standing there in his wedding tux, waiting for me to hand over the only thing Grandma had left in my name. I closed the folder. No. Dad's eyes narrowed. Anya. No, I said again. I'm not signing anything, and Caleb is not moving into my house. Caleb scoffed. My wedding day, seriously. Mom grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to remind me she still thought she could steer my body when words failed. Listen to me, she whispered. Your father is giving you the chance to be graceful. I pulled my hand free. Dad stepped toward me. If you humiliate this family tonight, I will correct you in front of everyone. The room went still. Nobody pretended not to understand him. A knock sounded from the hallway. Family photos, someone called brightly. Mom's expression changed in an instant. Her mouth softened, her shoulders dropped. She became the mother of the groom again. I tucked the folder against my chest and reached for my clutch from the chair. Before I could open it, Caleb said, "Just don't make a scene." I looked at him. You already did. Then I walked out. In the hallway, Elise's sisters were laughing near the garden doors. The photographer waved us over. My cheek was hot, even though no one had touched it yet. I placed my clutch on the bridesmaid table before the photos, keeping the folder hidden under my arm. And as I turned toward the garden, I saw my mother drift behind me. Her hand moved fast. She opened my clutch, took the beach house keys, and slipped them into her purse like they had always belonged there. When I came back from the garden photos, the first thing I checked was my clutch. It was open. The little inner pocket where I kept the beach house keys was empty. For a moment I just stood there beside the bridesmaid table, hearing the reception swell around me, forks against plates, the DJ announcing the wedding party, guests laughing like nothing had shifted under the floor. Then I looked across the room. My mother stood beside Caleb near the head table, one hand resting over her purse. She saw me notice, and she smiled. I walked toward her slowly, passing tables filled with relatives who had known me since I was a child. Aunt Lorraine waved me over. Cousin Dana lifted her phone for a photo. I ignored all of it and stopped in front of my mother. "Give me my keys," I said. Marlene tilted her head, keeping her smile fixed for the photographer circling nearby. "Not now, Ania." "Now." Her eyes hardened but her mouth barely moved. "You can have them after you do the right thing." Caleb glanced around. "Can you not do this here?" I looked at him. "You mean where everyone can see?" His jaw tightened. Before he could answer, my father tapped a spoon against his champagne glass. The sound rang through the hall. "Everyone," Richard called, stepping onto the edge of the dance floor. "Before we continue, I'd like to make a special family blessing." The DJ lowered the music again. My stomach dropped. Mom moved closer to Caleb, still guarding her purse. Caleb's face changed into that stiff public smile he used when he wanted people to think everything was fine. Dad lifted his glass. "Today is about family. It is about sacrifice. It is about knowing when to put someone else's future ahead of your own comfort." Several guests murmured warmly. I stared at him. He looked straight at me and smiled. "My daughter Ania has generously agreed to give Caleb and Elise use of the beach house as a wedding gift while they begin their married life." Applause erupted before I could breathe. People turned toward me, smiling, clapping, nodding like I had done something beautiful. Aunt Lorraine put a hand over her heart. One of Caleb's groomsmen whistled. Elise looked surprised, then confused, then turned to Caleb. "You didn't tell me that," she said. Caleb stood quickly, pushing his chair back. "Ania, thank you," he announced too loudly. "Seriously, this means everything." He was thanking me before I had agreed. That was when I understood the full shape of it. The folder, the sticky note, the stolen keys, the toast. They had not planned to ask me. They had planned to make refusing impossible. I raised my voice over the applause. "I never agreed to that." The clapping died unevenly, table by table. Dad lowered his glass. "What was that?" he asked. I said I never agreed to give Caleb my beach house. Someone coughed, a chair scraped. Elise slowly sat back down, her eyes fixed on Caleb. Dad laughed once, dry and sharp. "Ania is emotional. She has been that way since her grandmother passed." I felt every face turn heavier on me. He continued, "Grief can make people possessive." "My grandmother left that house to me," I said. "Not to Caleb, not to you, not to Mom." Mom stepped forward. "That house was always meant to stay with the real family." The words reached me before their meaning did. The real family. A few guests looked down at their plates. Dana's phone was no longer pointed at the flowers, it was pointed at us. I turned to my mother. "Give me my keys." She clutched her purse tighter. Elise stood again, slower this time. "Caleb, what is happening?" Caleb's face flushed. "Ania is making things difficult like she always does." "I'm asking for my stolen keys." Dad's expression snapped. "Enough," he said. "No," I replied. "You don't get to announce my property as a wedding gift." He stepped down from the dance floor. "You will hand over the legal papers, take back your little attitude, and stop embarrassing me in front of my guests." "Your guests," I said. "This is Caleb's wedding." "And you are ruining it." "No," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "You planned this." The room went silent. Dad crossed the last few feet between us. For 1 second I thought he might remember where we were. I thought the guests, the cameras, the white flowers, the bride standing behind him with tears in her eyes might stop him. They didn't. His hand came up fast. The slap cracked across my face. My bracelet snapped loose, flew from my wrist and skidded under a chair near the gift table. No one moved. Not Caleb. Not Mom. Not even Dad. I bent down, picked up the bracelet and held it in my palm. Then I walked out. The cold air outside hit my face as I pushed through the glass doors. My cheek burned. Behind me, the reception hall stayed frozen for a few seconds before the music started again, too soft and too late. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and called the number engraved inside the bracelet. My grandfather answered on the second ring. "Grandpa," I said barely above a whisper, "they did it in public." His silence lasted just long enough to tell me he already knew what that meant. Then Victor Hale said, "Stay outside, I am bringing the file." The reception doors shut behind me, but the wedding did not stop. That was the part that made my stomach twist. Through the glass, I could see the lights moving across the dance floor again. The DJ had restarted the playlist. Guests were turning back to their tables in stiff, uncomfortable waves, pretending they had not just watched my father hit me for refusing to surrender my beach house. I stood beside the valet stand with one hand against my cheek. The cold air made the sting sharper. For a moment, I thought I might throw up. Then a young server in a black vest slipped out through the side entrance, holding a folded towel with ice inside. "Miss Cole," he said carefully. I turned. He looked nervous, like even speaking to me might cost him his job. I saw what happened, inside, I mean. I took the towel, "Thank you." He glanced back at the reception doors, then lowered his voice. "I also saw your mother earlier, at the bridesmaid table. She took something from your clutch." My grip tightened around the ice. "You saw that?" He nodded. "Keys, I think, silver ring, blue tag." For the first time that night, I had something besides my own word. "What's your name?" I asked. "Evan." "Evan, would you be willing to say that again later?" He swallowed, then nodded. "Yeah, I don't like people doing that and acting like nobody saw." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed in my hand. 3 missed calls from a number I did not recognize. Then a voicemail notification. I pressed play and held the phone close to my ear. "Hello, Ms. Cole, this is Meredith Lane from Coastal Union Bank. I'm calling to confirm authorization regarding a property management transfer connected to the Harbour Point Beach residence. Please return this call as soon as possible, as the preliminary filing references your consent." The world narrowed to the sound of my own breathing. Property management transfer. Preliminary filing. Your consent. The folder in the bridal suite flashed through my mind. The bank logo, my father's sticky note. "Get this done before toast." My mother's hand sliding into my clutch. My father announcing the house like the decision had already been made. I called the number back. A woman answered after 2 rings. "Coastal Union Bank, this is Meredith." "This is Ania Cole," I said. "You called about the beach house." There was a pause, paper shifted faintly on her end. "Ms. Cole, thank you for returning my call. I need to verify whether you authorized a temporary management rights transfer for the Harbour Point property." "I did not." Another pause. "Did you sign or initial any document today involving Caleb Cole or Richard Cole?" "No, they tried to make me sign something, but I refused." Her voice changed, becoming slower and more careful. "A preliminary document was submitted this morning with your typed name and partial initials." My fingers went numb around the phone. "I didn't initial anything." "I understand," Meredith said. "Then I strongly advise you not to allow anyone access to the property, the keys, or original trust documents until this is reviewed." "My mother has my keys." Silence. Then Meredith said, "Ms. Cole, document that immediately." The glass doors burst open behind me. Caleb came out first, his tux jacket unbuttoned, his face red. He did not look ashamed, he looked furious. "What are you doing?" he snapped. I lowered the phone, "Finding out why a bank thinks I gave you management rights to my house." His eyes flicked to the phone, then away. "Dad is handling the paperwork." The words hit like a confession. I stepped toward him. Why do you need my house so badly? Caleb ran a hand through his hair, ruining the careful styling from the ceremony. Because my business loan collapsed, okay? The bank wanted collateral. Dad said there was a way to fix it. So your wedding gift was supposed to be my property. He pointed at me. You don't understand pressure because you don't have anyone depending on you. No, I said, I understand being cornered. Before he could answer, my mother appeared in the doorway. Her makeup had started to crease beneath her eyes, but her hand was still wrapped around my key ring. What are you doing out here? She shouted, calling strangers to ruin your brother's marriage. I looked at the keys in her fist. You mean my stolen keys? She shoved them behind her purse. Lower your voice. That was when headlights swept across the valet lane. A black town car rolled to a stop beneath the venue awning. The driver got out first. Then the rear door opened. An older man stepped onto the pavement with a polished cane in one hand and a leather document case in the other. Beside him was a woman in a dark suit, carrying a legal folder against her chest. My mother went completely still. For the first time all night, her face lost every bit of control. The man looked past Caleb, past my mother, straight at me. Grandpa, I whispered. Victor Hale started toward the doors. Mom stumbled back like he had brought the ocean in with him. Then she screamed so loudly, the guests inside turned toward the glass. Victor, no, please don't do this here. Victor Hale did not answer my mother. He walked past her with his cane tapping once against the stone, then again against the polished floor inside the reception hall. The music died for the third time that night. But this time it was not because my father had demanded attention. It was because every person in that room turned to watch the man my parents had spent years pretending did not exist. My grandfather stopped in front of me first, not Caleb, not my father, not the guests. Me. He lifted one trembling hand and touched the side of my face where the slap had landed. His eyes sharpened. Did Richard do this? He asked. I nodded once. Behind him, my father stood near the head table with his glass still in his hand. Victor, this is a family matter. Grandpa turned slowly. No, he said. This became a legal matter the moment you filed false documents against my granddaughter's property. The room went so still, I could hear Elise crying softly at the head table. My mother rushed forward. Please, not here, not at Caleb's wedding. Grandpa looked around at the flowers, the candles, the half-eaten plates. The stunned guests, you chose here. Then he raised his voice just enough to carry. Anyone who does not wish to witness a legal matter may leave now. No one moved. Not one chair. The woman in the dark suit stepped beside him and opened the folder she carried. Grandpa said, This is attorney Lenora Price. She represents the Hale Family Trust. My father laughed under his breath. Trust, that house was Margaret's, it's family property. Attorney Price looked at him. The Harbour Point Beach residence was placed into a protected trust 6 months before Margaret Hale passed. The sole beneficiary is Ania Cole. A whisper moved through the room. Grandpa's jaw tightened at my grandmother's name. Margaret left that house to Ania because Ania was the one who stayed. She was the one who changed the bedsheets, handled the medication schedule, opened the porch doors when Margaret wanted to hear the water. Caleb looked down. Grandpa continued, Richard and Marlene knew this. They also knew they had no authority over the property. Mom's voice cracked. We were only trying to help Caleb. No, Attorney Price said. You submitted preliminary documents to Coastal Union Bank this morning claiming Ania had consented to transfer temporary management rights to Caleb Cole. Elise stood from the head table. Caleb. Caleb's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Attorney Price held up a page. The filing included partial initials beside Ania Cole's typed name. Those initials do not match her verified signature samples held by the trust. My father slammed his glass onto the table. This is absurd. It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding doesn't require stealing keys, Grandpa said. Every eye turned to my mother. Her fingers clamped around her purse. From near the side doors, Evan, the server, stepped forward. His voice shook, but he spoke clearly. I saw Mrs. Cole take keys from Miss Cole's clutch before the reception. Mom spun toward him. You don't know what you saw. I saw a silver ring with a blue tag, he said. Cousin Dana lifted her phone from beside the gift table, and I recorded Uncle Richard announcing the house as a gift before Anya agreed. The shift in the room was almost physical. The same guests who had applauded for my stolen house were now staring at my parents like they had finally seen the trap from the outside. Elise walked away from Caleb. Her veil caught briefly on the chair, and she yanked it free. Was our marriage supposed to start with stolen property? She asked him. Caleb's face collapsed. I didn't know they forged anything. But you knew they were pressuring her. He said nothing. That silence answered her. My mother began crying, then screaming through the tears. Victor, you are choosing her over your grandson. Grandpa did not flinch. I am choosing the person who did not forge papers, steal keys, or strike a woman in front of 180 witnesses. My father's face had gone grey. Attorney Price stepped toward my mother. Mrs. Cole, return Anya's keys. Mom clutched her purse like it was a life raft. Grandpa said quietly, Marlene. Something in his voice broke through whatever performance she had left. With shaking hands, she pulled out my keys and dropped them into Attorney Price's palm. Attorney Price handed them to me. The metal felt cold and heavy. Mine again. Then Grandpa opened the leather case and removed another document. Richard, Marlene, effective immediately, you are removed from all remaining Hale Family Trust benefits. Any future support connected to the trust is terminated pending legal review. My mother made a small sound, almost like a gasp with no air behind it. Dad stepped forward. You can't do that. I already did, Grandpa said. Attorney Price added, the trust will also pursue action regarding attempted fraud, coercion, and unauthorized property filings. We will be requesting statements from witnesses present tonight. Chairs scraped back. Not because people were leaving to avoid involvement. Because people were lining up to give their names. Aunt Lorraine, who had clapped when Dad announced my house, came to stand beside me with tears in her eyes. Dana sent the recording to Attorney Price before dessert was even cleared. Evan wrote his statement in the manager's office while Caleb sat at the head table alone. Elise left before the cake was cut. Her parents walked on either side of her, one carrying her train so it would not drag across the spilled champagne near the dance floor. Caleb called after her once, but she did not turn around. My father stopped speaking. My mother kept whispering that this was not fair, but no one answered her. For years my parents had survived by controlling the room first. They decided who was selfish, who was dramatic, who owed what to whom. That night the room stopped obeying them. In the weeks that followed, the video never went public online, but it traveled through the family faster than any formal announcement could have. Relatives who used to tell me to keep peace started sending statements to Attorney Price. My mother's sisters stopped taking her calls. Caleb tried blaming me for ruining his marriage, until even his groomsmen told him no one believed that version. The bank froze the filing. The trust strengthened the property protections. My locks were changed before sunrise 2 days later. And my bracelet, the one that had flown across the floor when my father hit me, was repaired by the same jeweler my grandmother had used for 40 years. Grandpa drove me to the beach house the first weekend after everything happened. We stood on the porch together, watching the grey water roll under a pale morning sky. For a long time neither of us spoke. Then he handed me a small envelope. Inside was an old note from Grandma, written in her careful slanted handwriting. Anya, this house is not a reward, it is a refuge. Do not let them turn it into a prize. I folded the note and held it against my chest. Months later, that porch became the place where Grandpa and I drank coffee on Saturday mornings, while we restored the loose railing Grandma had always hated. I planted lavender along the steps. I stopped answering calls that began with guilt. I stopped explaining why no meant no. The house stayed mine. Not because I fought the loudest. Because the truth finally entered the room with proof in its hands. And the last time Richard demanded my keys, he lost every door he thought would always open for him.